Welcome everybody. This is a K12 webinar. For those of you who aren't aware, we do this about every 2 months. If you go to the NRCDP K12 website, what's coming up is always there. We also promote it through social media. And for anybody who knows of somebody who might want to have hear what we're going to talk about but can't make the call tonight, they're all recorded and put up on YouTube as well. So there's ways to get the information if not able to make a particular webinar. So tonight we have a great guest and panel of guests. We have representatives and kind of the experts from the NINDS, led by Tish Wigand, Dr. Wigand, who is the director of the Office of Training and Workforce Development, where she leads the development, implementation, and evaluation of the NINDS portfolio for research, training, and career development programs. So the F series, K series, R25s, which are now called UE5s, all that kind of stuff goes through Tish's office, and she's very, so with that role, for all junior members who are looking for career development awards, she and her team are very important. So it's great to have her as a panel. She's going to introduce her panelists, and I'll let them kind of roll with it. And then hopefully at some point we'll have a little bit of time for questions, if that's okay. So welcome, Tish, and your team. Thanks for doing this.
Sure. Thanks for having us. We're really happy to be here. And I guess the game plan is, I think how this came about is that we had been actually talking with one of the other K12s, the child neurology K12, Ann Paduri, who's here, the deputy director of NINDS. She and I had been out to dinner with them, and we were talking about how we could help the community, right? And I think that was earlier on when a lot of NIH wasn't very communicative. We weren't really allowed to speak to people, and we didn't really have a lot of information to share. But we thought it might be good to jump on and have a little bit of a town hall, give some updates on information that we do have. There's still lots of uncertainty, but there are things that we can share, and also give people a chance to ask us questions, and also really just remind everybody that we're still here. NINDS still cares about training. We still care about you guys. We are still here fighting the good fight. And we're still gonna, be around to help you the best that we can to move forward in your careers. So with me on the call today, I think there were some others that joined for the child neurology call, but we have a little bit of a different group for tonight. It's really just myself, who Greg already introduced, so I won't say anything else about myself. But also we have Dr. Ann Paduri, who is the deputy director of NINDS, and also K. Reza Izadeh. So I'll hand it to them so they can just introduce themselves. Ann, if you want to go first, and then pass it off to K. And then we'll go from there.
Sure. Thanks, Tish. I'm Ann Paduri. I was trained as a child neurologist and was actually on a K12 myself through our Department of Pediatrics, where I trained, and then did a K23 in genetics of epilepsy. And over the course of the years had gotten involved with NINDS in a number of different ways, including as a reviewer for training grants, like K23 and K08 series. And I've been really, really excited to be involved in the various trainee office offerings, including some of the ANA, NINDS, K23, K08 symposia, and then the R25, now UE5 symposia, and so on. So in my work with Walter Koroshetz, who's our director, a lot of our recent discussions actually have turned to the workforce. These programs are really meant to develop the workforce, develop the physician scientists workforce. And at this point where there's a lot of uncertainty, I think one of our main areas of focus is to make sure that people know, as Tish said, that we are still there, the NIH is still there, and the momentary blips in terms of what's going on and the uncertainties don't take away from the realities, which is that the patients who you treat also need your science, and we really need all of you to engage in the science at early stage and then throughout your career. So I'm really here representing the Institute, but also representing the community, and I'm sure all of your mentors and department chairs and so on who want to make sure that this pipeline continues. Okay.
Thanks, Ann. I'm K. Reza Izadeh. I'm a program director in the Office of Training and Workforce Development. I'm a neuroscientist by training, but kind of left the bench over a decade ago. I've been with NINDS since 2018, actually one of the first projects that I kind of worked on was getting familiar with our K-12 programs, our outcomes, looking at our trainees that are in the program and all the successes that this program has had. When I joined with Steve, Tish took me under her wing. She's mentored me, in a lot of these programs, and I've handled a lot of the career development awards for clinicians. And now I'm moving into, I'm staying focused on that, but moving into institutional awards as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions folks have about pursuing. I mean, obviously the mandate for the K-12 is pursuing independent K awards. So happy to help, answer any of those questions, give you the lay of the land, like what is the reality of actually pursuing those things. And so we always encourage people, reach out to us early in the process, get familiar with us. We're just people. We're still here. We're, as Tish was saying, we're fighting the good fight. We want you to do the same on your end. We've made a lot of gains in the clinical space and engaging clinicians and especially neurosurgeons. It's kind of a coup in our mind that we can keep neurosurgeons involved in research when they have such a wide array of opportunities and a lot of benefits to pursuing private practice. So that's just you guys showing up and being at the table is a win in our book, but we want to do the most that we can to support your kind of aspirations in developing your research career. So again, feel free to reach out to us. We're always here, and we'd like to get to know you and give you the best advice that we can so that you do stay engaged. It's a worthwhile endeavor. That's why we're here, and that's why we show up every day. So with that, I'll pass it back to Greg or Tish to kind of give you, or I guess Tish, to give you an update on, goings on at the NIH now.
Thanks, Kay. Anne, I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to say before I said anything.
I guess I just would love a moment to reflect on the current times and just acknowledge that particularly for early career investigators and clinician scientists trying to kind of make it into the NIH funded pipeline, that there is a lot of uncertainty, and we all want to acknowledge that. You're sort of entering a time where neuroscience is really exciting, and particularly as neurosurgeons, there's a lot of excitement in the field in terms of delivery of gene-based therapies, device development, all sorts of basic work that needs to be done, and really lays the foundation for future therapies that we really are hoping you'll be the scientists and clinicians who can deliver. So the moment scientifically is really exciting, and then the moment from a funding perspective is very, very uncertain. And that's where I know we're hearing from a lot of trainees. There's a lot of concern. And we're also hearing from training program directors and department chairs and division chiefs saying, look, we want to support these people, but we're not sure what's happening to the indirect costs at our institution and so on and so forth. So I just want to acknowledge the uncertainty, but also just emphasize that the science is waiting to be done, and we really need bright, talented folks like yourself who are committed to your clinical expertise, but also committed to making things better for patients. And, that doesn't make it easy to get funding, but it really sort of outlines the reasons that you're here and the reasons we want to see you continue on this path. So to that end, we don't know what the budget's going to look like. We've heard everything from a 40% cut to maybe it'll be the status quo and everything in between. I know there are a lot of non-federal employees, patient advocacy groups, professional societies who have been lobbying for attention and lobbying for the need for biomedical science to continue. And that's great. That supports efforts like the NIH, but there's also a lot of uncertainty. And at some of your institutions in particular, there may be grants that have been terminated or threatened to be terminated or at risk for that, and all sorts of other things. And then in the background, there's all these court cases coming and bringing up injunctions and so on. So it's hard to keep track of. But I think what I would say is, regardless of what's going on politically, the patients are coming. They have the conditions they have. They need your minds and your science to move the field forward. And I sincerely hope that our training programs will be preserved in all of their current form. It is not even a discussion at this point in terms of eliminating the mechanisms from our list of things we want to fund. As Tish said earlier, Walter really feels strongly about training being, first of all, one of the sort of feathers in the cap of the NIND, as our training programs have been longstanding and have really done a nice job, I think, of engaging with communities and bringing people into the field. Um, but I also just would say that if you're thinking about applying for, from the K-12 program, K08, K23, and there's any hesitancy because of the current climate, I would just say, look, write out your science, get your science crystallized, gather the mentoring team, figure out who's going to be your grants manager, and do all those things. Because if we have our way, these programs will not change, and they'll be the last to go if anything is going to be compromised, because it's the whole future of the field depends on our ability to not only engage with you all who have already made the first step into this NIH funded path, but also to do the future work. So I think, worst case scenario, some things get put aside, some of the mentors funding gets delayed or compromised. But we're still going to need people in your shoes to be entering the training programs and, showing your institution that you've got what it takes, that you've got the ideas, that you've gathered a mentoring team, and there's all those people behind you. Getting your chair to sort of engage and get behind you means a lot. And so I think just that process is well worth it, as hopefully you saw from the K-12. And hopefully the NIH is able to fund a lot more of the early stage science and continue what it's been doing. But I think these next few years are going to be a little bit challenging and will require partnerships from home institutions, from foundations, from philanthropy, and all those things. And I think there's nothing better than a well worked out and well formulated proposal that you could then take not only to the NIH, but say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about when someone knocks on your door and says, hey, people have realized that the funding's a little uncertain from the federal side. How can we help? So I hope you'll have all doors open to you and be able to benefit from an abundance of funding sources. And we're certainly here to support you, both in terms of reading aims. You can certainly send them our way, and I'm happy to look personally. And I know the office is happy to take a look and help steer people towards the right scientific program direction in terms of who can help you along the way at the NIH side, but also just get an external set of eyes at who, we're not doing your project, so we can be a little bit more objective sometimes in terms of, hey, that makes sense, or maybe that would be a 15-year project and pare it back and things like that. So please call on us for those sorts of things too. And hopefully we can continue to partner in the years to come.
All right, thanks, Anne. So I made some slides, which I'm going to attempt to share. I'm having a strange technical situation here, so I hope it works. Can you guys see this? If it's not, it is doing so. I'm having like seriously weird situation.
I can see it.
Hold on, let me do it again.
Fine.
Sorry. I should have done this. So can you guys see this at all? Because I can't see it.
I'm seeing your screen, but I'm seeing different people on Zoom kind of.
You're sharing the Zoom screen, it looks like.
Is it possible for someone else to share my slides? I think I sent them. I'm sorry.
No, you're right.
Having like
Brigitte or Sophie, do you have the slides?
Unprecedented problem.
Yeah, I'm just gonna share 1 second.
Okay. Thank you.
I should have just stayed in the office or gone back to the office. I haven't worked from home much in quite a while, so the whole setup is just going haywire. So I appreciate you.
Just in case. Are you able to see them right now?
Yeah, in the like PowerPoint mode. Yep, that's perfect. Okay. I guess I don't know if that's the first slide. Can you go to the first slide?
There we go.
Okay. Yeah, so well, really we can just keep going. So basically the agenda, if you go to the next slide, it was already to just can you do next slide? The plan was just to really introduce ourselves, give Anne a chance to say a few things because she's really at a high level and kind of leading the charge alongside Walter for NINDS, and then go through a few slides, talk through some of the changes that we are able to share about, and then just open the floor for questions. So if
Hey,
there are,
Brigitte, I don't think you're advancing. We're still on the first slide.
Is
At
it
least for
on
me.
the second one
There
now?
we go.
yeah, okay, so you can
There
go to
we
the
go.
next slide.
Perfect.
So we'll just go from the top and start with some changes. The one big obvious change is that there's a new NIH director that I'm sure all of you are aware of. This is Jay Bhattacharya. He came in the last couple of months. We've heard directly from him a couple of times, once in a town hall for NINDS or for NIH that he did for everyone internally. And then he also came to our council meeting and our NINDS council and gave a talk and gave the opportunity for people to ask questions and things. And I thought it might be useful just to level set. This is who he is. If you have not seen his priorities, I think it's important to know kind of what he's thinking about and how this might fit in with any of the work that you're doing. But his priorities, very briefly, are that he's interested in population health and improving it. He's got this a lot of ideas around rigor and reproducibility, which, as many of you know, you've probably met Shai Silberberg from NINDS. Shai has actually gone and just met with Dr. Bhattacharya this past week to talk about the things that he's been doing and how he might be able to help advance some of the aims that the director has there. He's interested in innovation and embracing new approaches. He's thinking about ethics and transparency and keeping things safe and the studies that we do safe, and also encouraging academic freedom. So these are some of the things he's thinking about. I think it's, and we'll see how all this plays out and how it actually kind of trickles down into the research that gets funded. Next slide. Okay, so there are some changes that have happened very recently at the NIH level, and we'll talk about those. One of them is that they have instituted this ESI eligibility extension, and I put kind of the three main bullets for this and a link to the notice. It's totally fine to share these slides after so everyone can have them. You can actually look at this more in depth. But basically, depending on when your last submission date or your last eligibility date would be, as an ESI, they're doing some extensions, whether it's you can have 12 additional months or 4 additional months or 8, depending on what your last date is. So this extension has happened just because of all of the kind of slowdown and even stoppage of grant review and funding that has gone on in the past couple of months. Next slide. There also has been a temporary policy exception for K awards that also just rolled out. Individuals who have had their awards prematurely ended this year for one of many different reasons that may have existed are going to be able to then apply for a new mentored career development award. So if you've been on a K, your K has been terminated, you can actually roll over and apply for another K award, as long as you still meet other eligibility requirements that have been laid out for that award. Next slide. So within NIH, I think many of you have probably become aware. If you haven't, I'm going to let you know that all review is going to the Center for Scientific Review. So at NIH, the way grants are reviewed is either through the Center for Scientific Review, which is the big central sort of reviewing operation run by the central NIH. This is where lots of, for example, R01 applications are often reviewed, and they set up all the study sections for R01s. F31 fellowships all are reviewed there, for example. And then in addition, for a long time, there have been review branches at the individual institutes, right? So NINDS also had our own review branch. And this is where, for example, the K awards that you guys, the K08s, K23s, K02s were reviewed through NST1, right? That was run by the NINDS in-house study section. And so all of the sort of specialized programs that the different institutes have created, even like the K12, for example, would have been run, those reviews were run by these in-house NINDS or institute-based review groups. Now, everything is moving to the Center for Scientific Review, including the K awards. So they won't be reviewed anymore in-house by NINDS. They'll be reviewed at CSR. There won't be an NST1 anymore. We do encourage people that have served on those study sections to keep serving because we still need I mean, these grants are still going to come in, and we still need the right experts to be able to evaluate the science and to really just help that process keep going. So with this move to the Center for Scientific Review, it's still a bit uncertain how these grants are going to be reviewed, where they're going to be reviewed, how they'll be grouped. The latest that I've heard when I've asked about it for this next round, which will be the first round that happens, the first cycle where all of the grants are going to CSR, it seems like, from what I've heard, some K awards are getting put into study sections with all sort of K awards. Some of them are in study sections where I guess they will be reviewed as a subgroup in R01 study sections that are under this for the same scientific area. But nevertheless, there's going to be a lot of change and probably a lot of kinks that have to be worked out. And they may come down with a standardized, this is how we're going to do the K awards once they've done it for a round. But there's a lot of change going on, a lot of personnel change, a lot of people that have been moved over there to be able to manage this enormous additional workload that's coming there. So I would just encourage everybody to, if you're applying for K awards as this change is happening, certainly reach out to your program officer, reach out, and we're happy to try to talk you through the process or the changes. Any questions you have around this, we're here to help. But do be patient because there are lots of changes, and this is one of the really big ones. And I think it's going to take a little while for things to kind of get back into a new routine and a new flow. Next slide. Everyone has probably heard about this change with foreign subawards. So if you have a grant or a project that you're working on that's funded through NIH, and you have some funds that you need to send to a site, for example, that's in another country, and some funds get sort of diverted there to support your efforts in a different place. NIH has established a new award structure that's not going to allow foreign subawards being nested in the parent grant. There's lots of moving parts with this, lots of uncertainty around this. There's a lot of stuff going on here, but for now, I just put the link to the notice. If this is something that impacts the research that you're doing or a grant that you're funded on or working along with, you can feel free to reach out to your program officer or reach out to us, and we're happy to help with questions about how this could potentially impact your work. Next slide. So with respect to health disparities research, I think this question has come up a lot because there has been, all of the initiatives that were in the DEI space have been canceled or are sort of hanging in the balance, waiting for court rulings. I know there was a ruling that happened recently or yesterday, I believe, that may move things in a different direction, but it's kind of been swinging from pole to pole in the DEI space. And people have been asking, does health disparities research fall into that bucket as well? Currently, health disparities studies are still being funded, and information around what constitutes health disparities, which populations these are, how this is all defined, is still on the NIMHD website. There are fact sheets there with all of the information. So I don't know that much has changed so far in that space. If you have questions about anything related to health disparities research, I would absolutely encourage you to reach out to Sharice Sankar or Richard Benson at NINDS. They are sort of boots on the ground in this space and can help with, help guide you. I think another thing is if people are putting in applications that have a health disparities component, there's probably certain language or certain words and ways you want to phrase things or put things, certain information that you might want to use and other things you might not want to use. Sharice and Richard would have good insight into into kind of how to craft things in ways that aren't going to end up getting potentially hung up and confused for work that is not okay with the current executive orders. Next slide. Okay, so within NINDS itself, I think there also have been some changes. Well, there have been many changes, but there have been some changes to the way we're handling individual K awards. I don't know if anyone here has heard about any of this, but the way that NINDS has traditionally held K awards and some of the other individual training or career development mechanisms is that the awards were sort of co-managed by folks in my office, previously Steve Korn's office, but the training office would handle the sort of non-scientific components. We kind of govern all of the policy with these mechanisms. We write the funding opportunity announcements. We're very much looking at this in a big holistic way, and really trying to make sure that the standards that we're trying to hold everything to are reached. And then we work in concert with the scientific program officers who are really the scientific experts, right? So if you have an epilepsy K award, there's an epilepsy program officer that will be assigned to your grant, and then we'll also be tag teaming with them, handling anything that's not science. So because we've had some huge personnel changes, we've lost lots of staff, and people have had to be reassigned. Portfolio has had to be moved around. We have sort of flip-flopped the way we're handling these awards. And this shouldn't really impact you on the outside, except that you're going to have, like, when it says program officer for your grant, it will say someone from my office rather than the scientific expert. But we will continue to be co-managing them in tandem, right? So if you have a scientific program officer, you want to keep on talking to them. You also want to keep on talking to us. Really, the only difference is that we're going to be doing more of the administrative work coming out of my office rather than out of the scientific clusters. So we'll keep co-managing them. You'll keep talking to your scientific person. You'll keep talking to, we're now calling them subject matter experts. You'll keep talking to people in our office, and we'll continue to help you move forward as we always have. But I know we sent out some information about this, and I think it caused a little confusion, so I wanted to kind of try to clarify. Next slide. So as Anne was saying, this is a time when we have to think about diversifying our funding streams, even more than I think in sort of ordinary times. And so I wanted to just highlight a few research training opportunities that you can consider through NINDS that aren't sort of the traditional ones that you think about, like the K Awards or the K12 or the UE5, for example. But within some of the networks that NINDS funds, there are training initiatives and sort of fellowship opportunities. So there's the Rare Disease Clinical Network, there's NeuroNext, there's the Siren Network, as well as StrokeNet. So I would encourage you, if any of your work might fit into any of these spaces, to take a look at some of the opportunities they might have in terms of fellowship opportunities or just opportunities in the training or early career space. Next slide. Another thing I think that was a positive that I wanted to just call out is that there was a roundtable on cell and gene therapy. And this, I think there's a lot of, as Anne was saying earlier, this is an exciting time to be doing science. And there was a lot of excitement around this roundtable. And so I would encourage you to take a look at it, especially if your research touches on any of this, because I think there's some real energy in this space. And there will be probably lots of opportunity in this area, in these research areas, despite some of the changes across other parts of the scientific enterprise. So I would definitely encourage you to take a look at this, because I think it's probably a bright spot in a landscape that's a little bit darker than we're used to. Next slide. So I just wanted to also reemphasize before we open the floor for questions that the three of us, myself, Kay, and Anne, and the rest of the training folks, and of course Walter, at NINDS, we're all still here. We're all still working. We're working to keep things going with the K12s. We're working to keep things going with the individual K awards and our entire training portfolio. When I think every day we're reacting to new information and new changes. Sometimes they're roadblocks. Sometimes they're things that we can find workarounds to. So we're spending lots and lots of time trying to keep the ship sailing. And I just wanted to remind everybody that we're here. We're still working. We're still working hard. We still are prioritizing training. And if you have any questions or any concerns or any angst, anything you want to talk about, you can feel free to reach out to us at any time, and we will be happy to help in any way that we can. So with that, I guess we can stop sharing the slides, and we can open the floor and take some questions.
Tish, thank you very much for that, and for the whole group. Maybe I could make a couple of comments and before we open it up, just to put things in perspective, and maybe your group could comment on this as well, since it seems like all have been at the NIH for some time. What I would say is, for someone who's been in this field for 21 years, there are ups and downs to the NIH funding, and there's times where we're blessed with special funding opportunities or a rise in the overall NIH budget. And then there's times where there's, it's a downtime, but it's the cyclical business. And you guys are all in the early parts of your career. You're either mid or upper level residents, or you're junior faculty, and it's going to be cyclical, and it probably is not going to take 10 years, for the cycle to come back. I would just keep that in mind, and it will be tougher, for the next couple of few years. Probably the pay lines are going to be lower. There may be some other barriers. There may be some opportunities, but I would just encourage you to find ways, use your startup wisely. If you have startup, I think looking for foundation support, intramural programs, even philanthropy, and other ways to move your science forward and wait this lower cycle out, and compete in this current environment. But it's going to get better. It always does. And then you'll be primed to take advantage when things turn back towards an upward trend. So I just want to, offer that bit of perspective, rather than, because I've literally have had conversations with residents and junior faculty from within WashU, my home institution, or other places, who are like, should I even be doing this? That, this is not the time. This is terrible environment. The NIH is going, is it won't be funding at the same level. It's going to, we can't compete. Is this the right, should I even be considering this, given the current environment? And my answer to that is yes. The NIH, as you've heard today, prioritizes training grants and making sure they don't miss a generation of clinician scientists. And it's a cyclical business, and things will come around in some period of time, and you can take advantage of it when that happens. So I just want to provide that bit of perspective. But if anybody from NANDS would want to comment on that, I'm sure we'd all like to hear it.
Yeah, Greg, I completely agree. I mean, I think we all had our different paths to get where we arrived as physicians and scientists, some more linear than others, but I think, there were a range of things available, and things have been cyclical, and there have been better times and harder times. I think I would just add that it's never been easy, but the people who are going into this, as you all are doing it because you're motivated and you've got ideas and energy, and you're committed clinicians, but you're also committed to making medicine as an enterprise better by bringing science into it. And none of that cares about politics, and none of that goes away even when our pay line is the worst that I've ever seen, and certainly I think the second worst that Walter's ever seen. But um, if you've got ideas, and those of you who I know you've got great ideas, and you want to do it, keep going, because if you all don't do it, no one's going to do it, and then we're going to be sort of in a flat period, and that's not going to be good for science or medicine. I also think this is the time where philanthropy foundations are reaching out. They're reaching out to us to say, it looks like this is a time we might be able to do more. What areas should we focus on? And certainly when I've been asked by a variety of different groups, I've sort of said, look, we've got problems across the board if the NIH isn't able to fund as much as it used to for the next few years. But there's more work than we have people to do it. If we lose our whole generation now because people are scared to go into science, it is going to take a decade to make up for it. So let's get in there now and fund. So I personally have been encouraging all of those groups to look for people at your career stage and help to supplement. If they're deciding, do we do a 5-year grant for a senior investigator, or pilot grants for junior people? I've been encouraging all of these foundations to just get people's hand into the door so they can actually get their careers started. And I've also been encouraging the senior faculty, this review change that Tish mentioned. It's not what we wanted. Those of us who served on the training grant study section, it was, we always thought we were the best study section ever, because everybody was really nice and critical, but also really wanted to see the young people succeed. And it was the nicest group of people I've ever worked with. But we're going to make ourselves present in other ways, either as a part of the NIH, or, show up and do study section, make sure that you can speak up for the trainees, is what I've been telling our senior colleagues. And there's not a week that goes by that I don't get 2 or 3 calls from somebody somewhere saying, how can I help with all this stuff going on? And so there are people looking out for you. And I think it's not too much to say that, you really are on the minds of anybody who's ever mentored anybody, or anybody who's ever had a training grant. Like, we want to make sure that whole set of opportunities is available, and that the early stage investigators continue to get a lift. It's competitive. It was even before all of these changes, it was very competitive to get an R01 the first time. The early stage mechanism exists to acknowledge that and to say, look, if you get nowadays, it takes getting to the 16th percentile to get our first R01. That's pretty competitive, and it usually takes a couple of shots, but there's that acknowledgement that if you're early stage, uh, you should be given a little bit of a lift beyond the people who've been doing this for 10, 15, 20 years. So I just know that we're behind you, and that there's no shortage of people wanting to help your particular career stage. I think it's also important, Greg, what you mentioned about the philanthropy and the departments. People will come and say, "Well, how do I access philanthropy? I'm finishing my training, or I don't know who these people are, and I don't have patients who come from that, place in terms of wealth." It's not for you to do alone, and I certainly am sort of an old school physician and never felt like I wanted to ask people. It's not my role, but it is the role of your development office, and it's certainly their role to engage with your chair and sort of make sure that they know what's happening. So, I think if your chairs know what you're thinking about, send them your Ames page, send them what you're working on. If they know, then the next time something comes along that might be a match, they can sort of say, "Oh, that sounds a lot like a set of priorities that would be well matched with this young scientist who's working on XYZ project." That's sort of how these things happen, and it's not that we're expecting you to go and ask people for money, and certainly not to ask your patients for money unless they're offering that. Certainly nothing, that's something I never felt comfortable with. But I did let my chair know on a very regular basis what I was working on, so he could then go and advocate for me. So just keep talking to people. Don't try to go it alone. Talk to everybody who might be willing to help you, and keep at it.
Thanks, Ann. Let me add one more thing, and I promise we can open up for questions. The other thing that has happened that all of you on the line can take advantage of is basically the last 10 to 15 years within neurosurgery, academic neurosurgery, organized neurosurgery, developing programs to help mentor and foster the junior surgeon scientists. So that means we have a community of neurosurgeon scientists. That is partly through the K12 program. That's where a lot of people have funneled into. What I mean by that is senior established investigators giving of their time to help the junior investigator. It's also through a program called the Academy Emerging Investigator program. It's kind of a sister program to the K12 run through the American Academy of Neurological Surgeons. There's a couple of ways to get into that program for added mentorship. If you're a spine surgeon, the spine section now has a emerging investigator program specific for spine surgeons. Another place to get mentorship. I don't know what it's called, but the tumor section also has things related to mentorship. And then these groups we're working together. And so we get together now twice a year for a half-day session where there are didactics, there are senior neurosurgeon scientists. Oftentimes there's NIH personnel. The last one we just had, Walter Korshitz was our guest and gave a half-hour talk. And so these are at the WNS and at the CNS meetings. They're half-day sessions, specifically designed to bring the community of neurosurgeon scientists together and to provide some mentorship and to provide some camaraderie, and share best practices and so forth. So if you're going to the WNS, please look for that. It's usually called something like neurosurgeon scientist, or maybe the K12 might be in the title. I run that. Brigitte, who's on the line, helps me run that. At the CNS, it's also some similarly titled thing. It's run by Kostas Hadjipanayas from Pittsburgh, but they're both similarly designed, half-day session, all about mentoring junior investigators. And it's a way to get connected with this community I'm talking about as another source to help you with your career planning outside of your institutional mentor. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, but I just want to chime in with one bit of nuance that I'd put in here especially for folks that are in like later years of the residency, folks that might be in fellowship, or even some junior faculty, is if you're planning on applying for a K at NINDS, we don't have set pay lines. So don't focus at this point, if that's what you're pursuing, don't worry about the pay lines. Don't worry about that stuff. If you're pursuing an R01, yeah, perhaps keep that, be aware of it. But no, like Ann was saying, go out there, compete. We've looked at our applicant success rate going back 10 years. This is for K08s and K23s. For clinicians, the applicant success rate is about 50%. So, and we've talked to other people that are like, well, why did you got good comments back from study section. Why didn't you pursue it? And a lot of people just chose to go after the R01. It's not that they couldn't get the K. They just decided to move on to something else. So don't count yourself out. The quality of your application is really what determines, if you get funding for a career development award. And, I don't think, speaking to Steve's, talking to Tish, even going back a decade ago, how much funding we had never really affected our pay line for Ks. Or what we selected for Ks, and it ebbed and it flowed. So definitely don't consider that, a foregone conclusion that, we're not going to fund the same level that we have historically, and that you won't be able to compete, because it's the quality application that determines, what we fund. And we're agnostic about scientific scope, which may be different from other institutes. We don't prioritize, let's say, epilepsy over Alzheimer's disease, over stroke, over what have you. It's just the best applications that come in. So, this is the time. If I was a trainee considering a K award, which 5-year award, this is the time to apply for one. Hopefully it'll tide you over till we do get to a funding situation and like an R01 level that is more accommodating and better. And it can change. When I first started in 2018, I think our standard pay line for R01s was the 16th percentile. ESIs could score within the 26th. Now it's the complete reverse. So it's the 8th percentile for established investigators and the 16th percentiles for ESI. And that may change in another 4 years. It could return back to where we were. So if you get the K, you'll be covered entirely for that period. And you can start applying and competing and get the comments back from your R to, iterate that R. And hopefully by the time it is better, a better funding situation, you can get it, funded and then establish yourself as, an investigator.
All right. We really are going to open it up for questions now. Any questions? Anything? You got the experts on the line. What would you like to know?
Awesome. Yeah, I have a question. I'm Wes Phillips. I'm one of the pediatric neurosurgeons at Stanford. I had a question about resubmissions and how that will be sort of handled. My original K was reviewed under NST1, and so now it's going to be reviewed at CSR. How is that going to will that matter at all? Will I lose the sort of benefit of resubmission and things of that nature?
I think it's hard to say. Oh, sorry. Oh no, I was going to say.
Go ahead.
I don't know if there's a loss of benefit, but the reviewers at CSR are still going to see they'll have access to the prior critique, so they'll know what the issues were, and we don't know who all is going to be on the study sections. There could be overlap in terms of reviewers as well, but certainly they're going to see the comments from before. So I would absolutely take the time to address them, because the reviewers always love a responsive resubmission. And but yeah, they'll still see, just like with the other review, it'll just be perhaps not the same exact reviewers. I don't know, Kay, if you had something to add.
No, I'll say the same thing. I just take the benefit of you have the benefit of NST1 comments, which were the gold standard in constructive criticism. So, I would take heed of those, definitely reply to them. If you have questions about what were kind of the score driving issues, or what you think were the score driving issues of that resubmission, make some time, reach out to us. We can jump on and chat with you and say, you don't have to do a point by point, response like you would to a journal submission or a manuscript submission. Really, spend the time, dedicated to talking about the things that were really driving the reviewers' concerns. And, speaking with us, speaking with the subject matter experts, you can get that develop that palette and understand in the summary statement, hey, what were the things that really were the crux of the issue that they had with my application? And then even if it went, even if your application went back to NST1, it doesn't always mean you get the same reviewers. And so there's no guarantee that it's going to the same exact set of eyes. So it's it doesn't necessarily mean that anything's different. It just may, mean that the scoring might be a little bit different than what we would have had previously with NST1. But again, like I said, we don't percentile, or we don't have pay lines. We have this added lever that we can pull, which is we see the comments and we can reach for things. And so if you've been responsive, if there's something that a viewer said at these new study sections is way off base, we can address that, and we have administrative means to reach and fund applications. So just do what you can do, and then don't worry about the things that you have no control over.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I don't know, for those of you who, I probably talked about this at the K12 retreat last fall, but the way things kind of get processed with these applications in the training space, because we don't have pay lines, and I would assume we're not going to continue to not have pay lines. When the review happens, there's a score and there are critiques, and we are going to look at all of that information. We're probably going to try to listen to these reviews. It's a little different than when it was an NST, where we were kind of there and able to speak, et cetera, and kind of give an orientation. But we will be able to listen to the critique. We'll be able to take our own notes and get a sense of how the discussion flowed. The subject matter expert will also be able to hear the reviews as well. And then we'll bring that information back. We'll take a look at all of it. We'll go down and we'll look at each application. We'll look at all of the scores. We'll look at all of the summary statements, and we'll read the comments, and we'll say, well, this is where everything above this line, the comments are pretty addressable, and we probably could, help this person get these out the door. And if we might need to get a response to these critiques right now, right? But they don't probably have to come back in. And we'll discuss this all internally. We will then, we'll reach out to you and ask for a response to your critique, and we'll take that into account in internal discussions. We have a big committee meeting that has everyone in the room from Walter on down. It's really advisory to Walter, to figure out which applications are really ready for prime time now, and which applications probably should come back in. And so we spend a great deal of time deliberating over this, discussing it, thinking about it, trying to figure out where we can give people how many, to try to get as many people's applications out the door each round as we can, right, to fund all the good ones. So I think that's also underscores why it's important to interact with your subject matter expert, interact with folks in our office, with Kay, who handles these K awards, because we're going to be able to be an advocate for you and to help you navigate the process even beyond the application, right, as we're trying to figure out where this funding line is going to fall. So that process probably, I don't anticipate changes to that part of the process, like on our end. Hopefully that will be able to continue, and so you kind of expect that, right? We'll be taking it. We're not just going to draw a line when we see the scores come back. We'll read everything and fight about it.
Thank you. I appreciate the responses.
Others have questions?
If others don't have questions, or I'll let you think about it, I have two resources I always like to plug with the clinician scientists, especially, again, the early career researchers. One is NIH Matchmaker. If you Google NIH Matchmaker, this is a really useful tool to help you determine where your research fits. Most likely it'll come to us, but you never know. It's a natural language processing algorithm. You just have to, if you have some aims for a grant in there, just paste it in there. You can look for two things: similar projects or similar program officials. Similar projects will bring back projects similar to yours that have been funded at NIH, all different mechanisms where they've been funded, and similar program officials will connect you with like myself or other people across the institutes to open up a discussion. It's not always perfect, but it's a good place to start with. It gives you a lot of useful information, study section info, all that stuff. So it's good to check that out. And the second is, if you're moving into a faculty position, and let's say at the assistant professor level, and you've been there for at least a year, I'd encourage you to join the Early Career Reviewer Program at NIH. And so what that is the Center for Scientific Review. wants to bring in the new blood of folks coming into the faculty and bring them into review. So they start reviewing grants for the NIH and get familiar with that. And so they're going to bring you into a study section, most likely in art, that it complements your scientific expertise. You get to understand how the sausage is made. And it's just such a useful thing to go to. I mean, when I was a junior faculty just for like a hot minute, and I was preparing a K award and I was helping my colleagues prepare our awards, I thought I had an understanding of like, hey, this is how study section runs, and this is what I should be doing, and it's a chess match. And I did not until I came to NIH. Is like the veil was pulled, and it's just such a useful experience. It'll make you applying for that process of applying for like your K award, your RO1, so much easier. It'll make you bring you into contact with other experts in your field, other faculty members. It's just a useful networking thing in general. So I'd encourage you, Google NIH ECR if you have that experience now, or you will, someday down the road. Keep that on your radar. It'll pay dividends down the road.
All right, quiet group, but maybe we've covered everything. Any last comments or any questions anybody wants to ask before we adjourn?
I'll just say clearly they are all working very hard and
Yeah.
hopefully eating some dinner behind the curtain. But I would just
Yeah.
say, I'll just echo, please do be in touch. And there may be some questions people don't want to ask in a group, but fire away individually if helpful. And there's a lot in the news, and grants that have been terminated are supposed to come back. We don't know how that's going to happen. It's not going to affect the K12, but it might affect some of your mentors. There's no question that's not appropriate to ask us. So just send them our way if there's anything that you didn't want to ask as a group.
And you're not bothering us. So please, please do not think you're bothering us if you want to reach out. That's really why we're there. Sometimes now, because things are very, very crazy and it's really, really busy and there's a lot going on, sometimes we might be a little bit slower to respond than we have, I would say, in the normal time. But you can also feel free to ping us again and say, hey, I'm just putting this back on your radar, and that's not bothering us either, right? We're here to help. So, and I just want to thank Brigitte for running the slides and for accommodating my technical problems that I could not solve on my own.
Well, a collective thanks to all three of you for fighting the fight. We're going to get through this like we've gotten through other tougher times. And everybody on the line, please, tap into the community of neurosurgeon scientists. We're here to help, and together we can keep moving the field forward. So thanks for everybody for your attention, and hope you have a good night.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah.
You.
Thank you.